sim racing, mental health, COVID, and surgery. Now, how are those four things linked? Now, these things are all kind of intimately connected with my entry into sim racing and kind of my work as an NHS surgeon, and how it particularly helped me out in a rather dark time in my life when COVID was rearing its ugly head. Now, this is just a small little story about how sim racing has helped me, as I know it's helped a few of my members of my community, particularly with, those suffering from, problems or mental health, or those struggling. And it really is just my love letter to this amazing hobby. So if you want to join me for a little bit of a story, I'm just going to tell you my journey into sim racing and how Trauma Team Racing came to be. We shouldn't be too long, but grab your favorite beverage, sit down, and we will get right into it. So what you want to do is cast your eyes back to 2020. Now, it's very easy to think back on COVID with rose-tinted glasses because now it's pretty benign. The world is recovering, vaccines have come in, and people are infrequently dying of COVID. It still happens, particularly in the vulnerable, but it's not the slaughterhouse that it was when it first came. Now, particularly when I kind of first got my first experience of COVID, I was working in a busy trauma unit in the United Kingdom, and everything just got put to a standstill. We stopped all elective operating, and we basically just functioned as an emergency service for trauma. Some of my friends had to go work in ITU, and basically we didn't really know what we were dealing with. At that time, I can't kind of express kind of the fear, I think, that a lot of us had, but we hunkered it down and we got on with it, a lot of us. It wasn't just healthcare workers, it was everybody in kind of a key working position had to kind of just step up when perhaps they didn't really sign on to it. Now, I remember particularly that, I'm not going to dwell on this too much because we all lived through it and we don't want to relive it again, but this kind of forms the background of why sim racing is really quite important, and helped me kind of get through this. So at this time, you're basically going into work and you're asking the question, how many people have died today? Or who's sick? Or, it's who's got it now? How many wards are infected with this thing? And I remember going in for some days and just spending the morning filling out death certificates. And it doesn't matter how resilient you are, I think there does come a time where it really kind of makes an impact. And particularly when you're isolated at home, and everybody was isolated, and mine certainly isn't the saddest story at all. This is just my story and how it affected me, and I know there's much worse out there because I've heard it and I've experienced it with friends and colleagues. But you are dealing with that each and every day, and it's hard not to take that home. So that was it. Enter kind of Christmas 2020, and we're looking at a time where you're kind of gearing up to spending your first Christmas alone, and you're working COVID rotas, which are a rota is kind of a format of work for those that kind of aren't familiar with that. And we were doing 3 long days on, 3 long days off, 3 long days on, 3 long days off, and we were just on this constant conveyor belt, and it was exhausting, and it was all consuming because that's all you had. In the media, that's all you had. You just had that over and over again. Anyway, COVID, we'll park it just for a second. Enter kind of Forza, if you will. Bear with me, stick with me. For one reason or another, I had an Xbox Series X. I love my Xbox to bits, and I'd never really tried Forza, and it came onto Game Pass, and I just put it in one night. I just downloaded it. It was free. I would never have gone out and bought it, and I thought, what is this? This is amazing, right? So played Forza for a bit, and I thought, it's approaching Christmas, that's pretty lonely, right? Nothing good's going on, work's pretty tough, and I thought, I'm going to treat myself. I'd always thought about it, and I just got myself a Logitech G923, and I bought a wheel stand. I just thought, that's a lot of money, but we're gonna buy this, and we're just gonna love it. Okay, we're gonna love it, and we're gonna enjoy it. And Christmas, that's what it revolved around. It was just playing Forza and enjoying that, and it was great. I had my dad on my phone and I had a beer in my hand, and I was just bopping around these little landscapes with the wheel, and I was having a great time. And then for that day, and then Boxing Day as well, in between a bunch of shifts, sim racing allowed me to feel like a little kid again, in amongst all that chaos and all of that kind of depressive situation, if you will. And that was it really. And I found that in hindsight, looking back on it, that really was kind of my safety net, or my coping mechanism, I guess you could say, for kind of a lot of what I had to deal with after. So this just became an obsession, like it did for a lot of people, because it allowed me to take my mind off everything that I had to do to function at work, in amongst all of the, all of the sadness and all of the kind of destruction that COVID was bringing. Anyway, a G923, that, eventually turned into a Club Sport 2.5 belt driven, which never got opened. I phoned GT Amiga and I said, hey, I'm addicted to this, Then they said, no worries, we'll send a wheel stand back and, we'll exchange it for a Titan. Obviously, I paid the difference. So a GT Amiga Titan comes. And then I'm trying to build this in my lounge and things. And I didn't actually do any racing for about kind of 4, 5, 6 months. I was just building. And this was just an amazing tool to kind of take my mind off everything. And, I'd go to work and do all of that kind of, all of the COVID stuff at work and focus on that. And then I'd come home and I would just focus on building my rig and sim racing. Like a lot of us during kind of like the lockdown, I'd type in sim racing into YouTube, and then kind of we're all met by Jimmy Broadbent in his shed. He's, congratulations, Jimmy, you've gone on to, massive things. He's a massive advocate for the community. But that was, watching him in his shed and thinking, this is something here, right? And then the bug happens, isn't it? So then I started building a frame to raise the Titan to eye level with the TV in the lounge. And then I thought, that's not going to work. And then I thought, I'll just build a room. So then I decked out a room, blacked it all out, got plasters in, all sorts and things. That was kind of in between lockdowns and things, so I was quite lucky. And then decorated the thing out, and then eventually one thing leads to another, and then you end up with a DD2 inverted V3 Fanatec pedals. You've got a Club Sport shifter, and you've got a triple screen setup with a SimLab monitor mount, and then 5.1 surround sound, and then and it just spirals, doesn't it? It's still not over. But yeah, so that was just a massive kind of spiral, and that kind of, well, it's still going on really. That was probably most of COVID. And eventually I got racing. And then I was isolated at the time, and I really wanted to share this with, this passion that kind of was helping me so much. So I started Trauma Team Racing. Now, I've always loved video making and, the editing process. I used to make short films as a kid. And I decided this is a great little outlet. And I've always enjoyed education. I've just done my master's in medical education. There's a video on the channel if you want to check out my pain and suffering. But that was very important to me. And I tried to kind of amalgamate my healthcare and sim racing and my education passion and kind of filmmaking and stuff into this passion project. And it doesn't matter whether it succeeds or not, it is. And I thank you guys for watching and sticking with me, because we are going like the clappers. But this is just a hobby and a passion, and it's helped me out. Let's just talk about mental health just for a second. So mental health, now I'm not a mental health care professional, and I don't profess to be. I have some experience as an NHS doctor, and then subsequently as an NHS surgeon as I kind of progressed through the system. And I do deal with that to some extent, but I'm by no means in any position to give any form of advice. I can only kind of talk about my own experience. There is a big stigma with regards to mental health, and it is kind of shied away from, and even particularly in my profession. So, surgeons are we're a certain breed. We tend to be quite confident, type A personality, and you're often in a position of leadership because you have to lead a team. And sometimes that leads to, I'll say, not embarrassment, but kind of an apprehension to say, reveal how perhaps you're really feeling because of fear of being seen as weak. Now, I know throughout COVID that I was kind of, deeply affected at that time. I tend to take my work home with me. And when you're kind of going in every day and you're kind of seeing the decimation of kind of how many of your patients have died that week, it hurts. And, you know, and we compartmentalize because you've got to get on with the job and things, but ultimately you're dealing with people, and it's very hard not to take that home, and particularly when you've got no one to talk to. You know, and talking and kind of sharing is important. And it's, to be, if I'm honest, it's taking a lot of courage to kind of make this video. I've been thinking about doing this video for quite some time, and I've been thinking about it a lot because this is very much kind of, sim racing is important to me because it helped me when I needed help the most, really. Don't get me wrong, it's, you know, sim racing is a factor of kind of the help. You know, I've got a good support mechanism. My dad is fantastic. He is very much kind of the, you know, the right-hand man here at Trauma Team Racing. He, you know, he not produces, but he does produce it. He, you know, approves everything. I run every idea past him. He's my best mate, you know, and my little brother, you know, my little brother's fantastic, and, you know, we spent Christmas Day during COVID. He was working in a hospital nearby, and, you know, he was my bubble, so we met in a car park and we exchanged some gifts and stuff. But he's been, you know, massively supportive. But mental health, particularly for, I know people in my community, and I'm very proud of the community that I have, that, no, not we have, but we've built, particularly around this. I know, and some have opened up, and I'm not going to name names because it's not my place to do that, have opened up as to how this hobby and the camaraderie and the community behind it has really kind of helped them, be it with anxiety, depression, or other mental health issues that they may be kind of struggling with or kind of are working through themselves. And that's really it, really. I don't want to yap on for too long because this could go on forever, but, you know, if this hobby is important to you, or it's helped you out in kind of times of trouble, or it's, you know, been an escape mechanism, or the community has helped in some way, let me know in the comments below. And, you know, it'd be great to hear from you. And thank you just so much, you guys, for kind of allowing me to do this, and just, you know, keep enjoying sim racing. It's a great hobby, it's fantastic, you know, we are niche, you know, we're a very different breed, and no one's going to really understand how we can perpetually keep upgrading a rig for kind of years and years and years and never be finished. But yeah, so maybe one day we will, but, you know, until that day, we're gonna keep going. And that's it. Thank you for listening to my little story, and I wish you all the best, and I will see you, no doubt, very, very soon. So good night, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are in the world. Trauma Team Racing, out.